So, step number one, save $1,000 for your starter emergency fund. I don't want the. Maybe step two, pay off all debt except the house using the debt snowball, whatever that is.
The
Uh,
debt snowball actually means that you list up all the debts that you have, right? And you try to take the smallest one first. Say like for me, it would be maybe my student loans. It's like the smallest loan that I have next to mortgages. But you know, uh, he just says that it's always the smallest one, regardless of interest rate, because it's supposed to have this psychological effect that you get like dopamine, you get a little bit of mastery from being able to pay off a debt, even though mathematically it would be smarter to pay off the one with the highest interest rate.
Yeah, and you
yeah,
cut
yeah.
off excess expenses. So, you cancel your Xbox Live and you take that $20 a month and you put it towards the smallest loan you have. So maybe you owe money on like a phone, but you take all your money and pay that off as quick as possible, and then you take that payment plus your extra money and you apply it to the next loan, and you create
Okay,
this
I see.
debt
Yeah,
snowball
yeah.
where you're paying it off pretty fast.
Glow in the Dark says everyone has forgotten Papa John as an executive leader, but he will have his revenge. Those managers better watch out. One day he will return, and everything will be pizza, I guess. Clear the Mount says, "I wish we could call into the Longhouse." Well, you can super chat, and I will definitely read your message out loud.
I mean, should we
But
should
maybe
we
we
try to
should.
do that at
I
some
think we
point?
should try to do a maybe. Yeah, that sounds like something we can try to do.
Maybe the
In the
Christmas
next
episode or
year.
something.
Yeah,
Uh,
maybe the Christmas episode.
yeah.
We're going to do next week. By the way, for those of you listening, is we're going to have Frody from Guide to Culture on to talk a bit about Scandinavia, right wing politics, and paganism. And the week after that will be the final show for the year, which is we've named the Christmas show, which is going to just be a bit of a cozy stream where we talk about what we're going to do in Christmas and look back on our first year of the Longhouse, pretty much. So maybe we'll do a call-in segment there where we'll share the link and people can come on. All right, let's continue here. So the debt snowball, and then you save 3 to 6 months of expenses in a fully funded emergency fund. Then you invest 15% of your household income into retirement. Then you save for your children's college fund. Then you pay off your home early. Then you build wealth and you give.
So, I mean, for step four, witticism, can you just explain, for the non-Americans, what like the 401k and the IRA is?
Well, it's an account that you can put money into that you don't touch or you're not supposed to touch, and you're penalized if you do put your hand in that cookie jar. And it's like a supplemental, or it's supposed to be a retirement fund that you can then access once you retire. So the idea is you get your house paid off, you get sort of emergency stuff paid off, and then, for the next 30, 40 years, you just dump money into this 401k. And when it comes time to retire, you can pull that out and live off of it. That's the idea. But
So
it's
is
also connected to the economy. I mean, it's not just a solid fund that you're dumping into. It's also it's really just putting money into stocks, really, that your company allows you to invest in, as
so
far as
can
I'm
you
aware.
can you you select the stocks yourself, or is the company doing it for you?
There's like yeah, you can select different ones, varying risk of of varying range of risk, I should say.
Okay. Well, we have just you choose like risk levels and funds, but I don't think you can select individual stocks or stock sort of
Yeah,
collections.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. They just give you different options of risk, not specific companies. Like you can't put your 401k in like Apple stock or something.
Yeah. Glow in the Dark says BlackRock and Vanguard runs 401ks. Yeah, that makes sense.
And
Um,
the college fund then is kind of a similar thing, or is that also a savings account, or is it that you put into some kind of mutual fund
No, I think it's just
account?
a straight up. Well, yeah, you could do that. Yeah,
the
put it
college
in
fund
a
is
mutual
a
fund.
weird thing for us. Europeans because it's when it's like I pay 40% income tax, so the state pays for my child's college. I have to literally say, well, that's not going to be my problem, and I'm not allowed to not. It is very strange.
But of course, it's not the same for everybody. There's a lot of European countries where you have to pay for college, or
It is.
not
It
not
is.
as much as the Americans do, but the premium is significantly higher.
Certainly, if you want to go to the high quality universities, it's going to be quite expensive.
But the reason that I wanted to like bring up these baby steps is that this is like brain dead, right? Not that it's stupid, but every person who calls into the Dave Ramsey call-in show, he just goes back to this every time, and tells them like depending on where you are, just okay, have you done this? Have you done this? Have you done this? And if you do anything else, he just tells you no. So I mean, you can just look at this list and just you ask yourself, what would Dave Ramsey do, or what would he tell me to do? You just look at this. Just look at where you are, and okay, this is what you're supposed to be doing. But still, you have like hundreds and hundreds of people calling in, asking like these extremely kind of trivial questions, just to have this stuff read back to them. I mean, you could have like an artificial intelligence doing this, but the entertainment value wouldn't be the same, probably. And it's not insensible either. It's just that in certain cases, like you have someone who's on step 5, like say they're on step 6, right? And instead of paying off their home, they might want to like buy a rental property, which is not uncommon. Let's say like they've paid off half of their mortgage, and they can use the equity they have in their house to try to secure a loan for a rental property at a decent deal with a good cash flow and an interest rate. And the answer is always no. Like just no, 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 do not do it. But it's not necessarily good advice. I mean, you could, this would have been completely manageable for a lot of the people who call in. I feel like they're almost getting snubbed a little bit by Ramsey for telling them that they have to pay off the house. But that's just my view on it.
I think there's two types of people. There's one type of person this advice is for, and it's the retards that have no idea what to do with money. And
I was going to say, if you're
huge
calling
percentage
into
of
the
people.
show, you're already someone who wouldn't. If it was someone who were off the caliber who would make money off of it, they would just do it, right?
Yeah. Well, I think
Wouldn't call Dave Ramsey about it.
There's some people that can totally handle having credit cards and handle having a manageable amount of debt, whatever that means for you and your own income. But a lot of people can't. I mean, I think Dave Ramsey treats it, and he's used this metaphor before, is like alcohol. There's just some people that, once they start drinking, they're going to have 24 locos and just go crazy and go streaking, and then there's people that can have a glass of wine and they'll be okay. But his advice is mainly for that person who goes streaking financially.
Yeah, it's very well said. But I mean, in reality, on the flip side of this, the people who have gotten rich, let's say, I think Dave Ramsey is basically a sort of unique, even though he talks about the idea of like the everyday millionaire. But you talk about the people who in our generation got rich in one generation. Most of them did it through debt, right? Through debt financed either business, acquired acquisitions or real estate acquisitions. Like say someone like, that's a little esoteric for the international audience, but Peter Stordalen, for instance, like he, it's just like hotel acquisitions and shopping mall acquisitions with debt over and over and over again, right? Most of the,
it's or it's like government subsidized industry or contracts, right? That's
which is
big
financed by debt. I mean, of course, there's like a small percentage of the people who will, maybe say someone like Kanye West or something who will have a hit single or sell enough albums and concerts to become a millionaire, and they'll put it into something else, or they have like a book sale or some invention that they have. But that's like very much in the minority here. Most of the people, it's like they're able to get good debt, quote unquote, like debt with like low interest rates to buy up assets, and those assets accumulate in value, and they use that value to leverage and buy more assets. Really, that's kind of the if you read books like we've talked about, Rich Dad Poor Dad, and a lot of these kind of financial get rich advisors, that's pretty much what they tell you to do. You just take up debt to buy assets, and the assets pay for the debt. And of course, Dave Ramsey advises you against that. But I mean, it's I feel like you're running against inflation if you're trying to run against this stuff. That's kind of my view on it. That if you try to save money in your bank or anything else, the inflation just eats at it. It absolutely kills it.
Glow in the Dark says a lot of rich people got rich by networking and favors. Debt is for self-made people, and even then you need to know someone. Isn't that the plot of Eyes Wide Shut, pretty much? Or if you
They got
want
rich.
to, or if you want to, Tony Montana, Scarface. Doesn't matter how much money you have, you're never going to be an elite if they don't accept you, right?
No, exactly. But I think like for a regular person, you could go to the bank and ask for a loan to buy a rental property. Let's say if you have some money or if you've inherited some money, and they can help you with that. And if you've succeeded at one time, you can sort of keep snowballing it further.
Yeah.
In the sense that it is like the most kind of brain dead way to make money. That's accessible for regular people. There's this channel that I follow. It's called Bigger Pockets. That it's not just like this kind of Grant Cardone bravado nonsense. It's like actual people who have been able to use debt financing to build wealth quite significantly. So I mean, I think it is kind of a sensible niche, even though I see like there's very few people in the DR space who has like any interest for it at all. But yeah, I'm quite a fan of it. So. Yeah, that was just my little rant there. I don't know if there's like something else we should cover on the baby steps, or in terms of the Dave Ramsey show.
Well, he does advocate, just using cash only for everything, for every major purchase that you're ever going to make. If you want a car, you got to pay that car in cash. If you want a house, you need to pay that house in cash. If you're going to start a business, you need to have a huge amount of cushion to start that business, which is really, really hard to put on regular people in the
Can't.
economy we live in. Yeah, you just can't. That's the
But
bottom
and
line, which
like
is why he
when
gets a lot of flack.
Dave Ramsey says cash, he doesn't mean debit cards, right? He means actual
No, he means
banknotes.
physical cash.
Yeah, maybe in
A lot
Tennessee,
of it's
boy.
mattress, yeah.
In Norway, you try to do that. You try to pay for a car in cash, they think you're a criminal. Basically, they've kind of
Literally
reduced
do.
like
You have
the
to your bank sort of, when you deposit that money, it gets flagged, and you get the IRS basically on your doorstep, more or less. Got to account for where it's from.
which
Yeah, so
Anyone who's ever sold a car with any sort of value in Norway will know what I'm talking about.
yeah, I think that aspect of cash only draws in a lot of the calls too on his call-in show, because people are naturally going to call in and be like, "What do you mean I'm supposed to pay for college in cash? Like that's just impossible. How should I do that?" And he only has his, one response, which you either get it or you don't. But it does
Yeah.
make for interesting content because he is kind of pushing people between a rock and a hard place where, yeah, it's good to be debt free, but it's hard to live cash only.
And it
It
only
is,
gets
and
harder, right? I assume that Tennessee is a little bit behind. I'm ragging so much on Tennessee. I don't mean to do that, right? But it's, I think it is in some of these states that are lagging a little bit behind in terms of the technology, and it's not just because they're late to the game. I think it's also the political inclinations of the people there, where it is legitimate to not want to implement all of these kind of fintech solutions, right? I know that Japan has like a sort of cash only policy, even though they're quite technologically advanced in
they
other
do.
ways.
Although it's going to be
Banking
harder.
is generally a bit different. They have a bit of a different view on banking and the role of banks than we do here in the West. Banks are a lot more responsible for the outcome of their clients than they are here in the West. It's a much more of a two-way street.
Yeah, our whole economy is just debt based. I mean, that's all America is debt based. And it's really hard to not to get people out of a debt based system and say, well, you're just going to use cash. And like, this is why he gets so much hate, is because the average house right now is almost $500,000. The average new car is over $40,000. Yeah, that's insane. How am I going to pay cash for that? That's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
nuts. It's just completely impossible. Like the getting out of debt, I'd say probably the first 3 steps of the baby steps are worth it, and then the step 4 through 7 are all kind of Fantasyland boomer talk.
Yeah, it's easy to say if you already have a fortune, right? Um, Otherwise, I mean,
or
for
if you get
myself, if I were to imagine that I was sort of like starting from the ground with the income I have now, and let's say I didn't have a house or anything, I would be able to get to step 1 to 3 quite easily. But then it's like, okay, well, step 4, time to wait like 5 years, right? Put my life on hold while I just work like mad and build up
Yeah, the
income.
steps
Meanwhile, my wife's ovaries are drying up, and
the steps get really hard after 4.
yeah,
Of course, this is assuming a certain situation as well. Is assuming that you already have a house and that you already have kids. So,
yeah,
but
that's
of
fair. Yeah,
but of course, he doesn't have any exception for the people. Like that's the people I think it's the biggest problem for. If you're renting and you don't have kids and you're approaching your 30s, right? Like and you said, the ovaries are not getting any more fertile. Uh, can you really you have time to wait for this stuff?
yeah.
You kind of don't, to be honest. And like with the rents just going up and the stagnant wages, the rents going up. I mean, it's yeah, I just don't like that approach. You need help, whether it's from the government or it's from your family or whatever. It's especially the family, and that's kind of where the biggest problems that I keep repeating, like with Dave Ramsey. It's the like the bootstrapping, the kind of individualistic bootstrapping mentality, where because there's so many of these callers where he will just they'll call in about their kid living at home or something, and they'll just tell them to move out, to just find an apartment and move there. But because of like the jobs you're going to get are so low paying, and the rents are just going to keep going up, you end up as a wage slave, and you don't get anywhere. Like, how are you supposed to save up money if everything is just going up and your wages stay the same? And how much like upward mobility do you have from the perspective of like this kind of dead end job?
And
Almost nothing.
you start every generation from scratch right when they move out at 18. But
Yes, exactly, and you can't do that. I mean, it is sort of an economic suicide there, and it seems to go very deep for like Ramsey, this individualistic thing of just, yeah, you have to start from scratch, and it's everything is about the individual and the individual's money, and I earned my money, and
It's very
that's
strange because he'll say that in his call-in show, like no one's entitled to your money, right? That doesn't, and he stresses that doesn't mean that you can't give gifts to your family, of course, but you don't owe, like your kids shouldn't expect anything from you, and your parents shouldn't expect anything from you, right? Uh, and the other
I
way
just hate
around,
it. I hate that
which is
attitude.
so strange because that goes against like human nature, I feel, right? I mean, if I want to build a dynasty, quote unquote, I'm willing to help my family succeed across generational gaps, right? I mean,
Yes.
that's kind of
but
the
yet,
point. My dad worked hard so that I can work even harder, and in a sense, and reach higher, and so that my children can reach even higher than I did. I mean, why else am I doing this?
yeah, that's
That's
kind of
how
the
we,
whole
yeah.
that's the whole point. And I know it, like, you'll hear people say, "Oh, well, you have white privilege or you have this kind of privilege or you need to check your privilege." But that's kind of the whole point of the whole thing is I'm getting some privilege so that my kid can be more successful than me. And, if you're not giving your kid privilege, I mean, we all kind of look down on those people. Like you're not doing the right thing. You're not giving them any sort of privilege, which is kind of it's just opposite of how it should be.
Yeah,
I agree, and I mean this goes very far with Dave Ramsey as well. But I wish I had sort of stored a log of all of these calls that he had done for this episode. But there's this one episode where there's like some person calling in, and she's talking about her dad, right? And her dad became like a multi-millionaire on some patent or some like dumb investment that he made in the 90s. And now he's like getting into old age, and he's found some kind of like sugar babe that he's going to marry, right? And all of his inheritance is going to go to some like young woman who's like younger than his daughter, who just kind of swooped in at the last minute. And like the advice that he gives is like, well, yeah, no, you're not entitled to your dad's money, that's his money, that's but I mean, god damn it, I understand how the law works. But I think that within the law, within the framework of what's legal, I think that those kids should do everything they can
The
to
thing he
persuade
likes
their
to
dad
say
not
is
to do
that
this, right?
he says that you have no lawful right or entitlement to your dad's money in that sense. But he also says that you have no moral claim on his money, which I think actually is wrong. It's not that you deserve it just for being born, but I mean, if you were part of the family unit, then someone coming from the outside just taking that money is obviously wrong, right?
Yes, and I think
Um,
like in other, say
you can
like
say
in
that you
Rome,
shouldn't expect to get that money. That's one thing. You shouldn't live your life expecting to inherit, all your parents' riches, if any, right? That's good advice, I suppose. But to say that someone else can freely come and take it, I mean, that's obviously wrong.
yeah, I mean, I do think in places like Greece and Rome there were like laws against, let's say if you were a father and you squandered money, you would be punished for squandering your kids' money, basically, or that the children could sort of sanction the parents if they sort of squandered money because it's the family's money, like it's not just theirs as an individual. That's like this, it's like this much more enlightenment, or this very modern concept, and particularly like with the sugar daddy example. I mean, they should just do everything. I would even look through my fingers if they did something dirty there, to get the money out of there, because what's the value of that? I mean, are we going to be individualists to that point where it's like, we have to protect fathers, horny dads who want to squander all of their like parents and their grandparents' money on
He's
some
just mad that this other
some
woman is
young
prettier
gold
than
digger,
her.
right?
She can't seduce her own dad or something. Yeah.
Yeah, you
We're
have the
getting
wrong
into weird
mindset, right?
territory.
Yeah, you're being held back by your mindset. It's just jealousy and envy. It says so in the Bible. This is pure jealousy. You're coveting your dad.
Well, you just have to out bootstrap your dad's hot girlfriend.
That's true. Yeah.
It's jealousy, and yeah, people are jealous of the hustler attitude. You should find your own sugar daddy and
Yeah.
solve the problem that
Yeah,
way.
it speaks volumes about this woman's grind set that she hasn't found herself a sugar daddy yet. That's the issue here.